It began with a sound that had no business on that peaceful residential road. The heavy growl of Harley-Davidson engines tore through the still afternoon like distant thunder invading a clear sky. 4 bikers rolled in, their dark vests marked with the blazing emblem of the Hells Angels, their long shadows falling across the warm asphalt. Neighbors peered through their curtains. Mothers ushered their children inside, and even the breeze seemed to pause. Yet cutting through that noise and iron came a smaller, gentler voice, shaky, pure, and filled with a desperation that broke the heart. "Sir, would you buy my bicycle?" The riders slowed, their engines dropping to a low rumble. Standing at the edge of the sidewalk was a little girl, barely 6 years old. Her hair was fair and tousled, her dress tidy in contrast to her worn-out shoes. A pink bicycle with a white basket rested beside her, and in both hands she held a handmade cardboard sign that read, "For sale." The smallest among the bikers, or perhaps the most compassionate, switched off his engine and stepped down. The rest followed, their heavy boots landing solidly on the pavement. He crouched down to the child's level, his motorcycle gleaming behind her like a reflection of a harsh and unforgiving world. Her name was Mira, and her eyes carried something no child's face should ever hold: exhaustion. Not far behind her, beneath a tree, an older woman sat slumped against the bark, wrapped in a blanket, her complexion pale and her frame thin. The biker felt a knot form in his throat as Mira spoke again, gripping her sign a little more tightly. "Please, sir, Mommy hasn't had anything to eat in 2 days. If you believe in human kindness, in second chances, in doing what's right when the world looks away, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner." Stories like this one remind us that a single act of compassion truly has the power to change everything. The biker's name was Ryder. His crew called him Wolf. But that name had never quite suited him. Beneath the ink and leather was a man who had suffered losses most people couldn't fathom. A father who had abandoned him, a son who never returned, and a trust in the world he believed had long since died. But there, kneeling on that scorching pavement, something deep within him began to wake again. He asked her gently what she meant, and through halting words and quiet tears, Mira told him everything. Her mother, Clara, had worked at a local catering company, a business everyone in town respected, owned by Mr. Hensley, the kind of CEO who smiled for magazine spreads and made charitable donations in front of cameras. When the company cut back its staff, Clara was let go. She pleaded with him, begged for just a few more weeks so she could keep food on the table for her daughter. But Hensley didn't care. He told her she was expendable. After that, Clara had been too unwell to pursue new work. The bills kept mounting, the refrigerator stayed empty, and her pride stood in the way of asking anyone for help. So Mira had taken her only possession, her pink bicycle, and decided to sell it to buy food. Ryder felt something snap inside him, like the final thread giving way under years of suppressed fury. His brothers, Tank, Viper, and Mason, had seen that expression before. Without exchanging a single word, they understood. What they felt wasn't sympathy. It was righteous anger, the kind that rises when innocence is crushed beneath the weight of someone else's greed. Ryder reached into his vest, drew out his wallet, and pressed a thick fold of bills into the little girl's unsteady hands. "Keep the bike, kiddo," he said softly, his voice thick with feeling. But this was far from over, not for him. He couldn't simply ride off knowing that a powerful man had taken everything from a woman and her child and faced no consequence. He told Mira to stay close to her mother and promised he would return. Then the engines thundered back to life. The Hells Angels were no saints, but they had their own code of justice. That day, they didn't reach for weapons or fists. What they reached for was the truth. They made their way to Hensley's office, a towering glass building that caught the sun like a shrine to self-importance. The four men walked in with the force of a coming storm, their boots ringing across the marble floors. The receptionist went rigid. Through the glass wall of his office, Ryder locked eyes with Hensley, the kind of man who wore a gold watch, flashed a rehearsed grin, and hadn't done an honest day's work in years. "What exactly is this?" Hensley said with a sneer as they entered. But Ryder didn't raise his voice. He set the cardboard "for sale" sign, the very one Mira had been holding, down on the CEO's spotless desk. "That," he said calmly, "is the cost of your greed." For the first time, the polished executive looked genuinely rattled. Ryder recounted everything: the little girl, the mother going hungry beneath a tree, and a bicycle that held more love in it than all the man's luxury cars combined. Hensley tried to defend himself, muttering about business decisions and inevitable layoffs. But his words fell apart under the weight of those men's stares, not the rage of criminals, but the fire of men with a moral conscience. They didn't lay a hand on him. They didn't need to. Instead, Ryder leaned in and said quietly, "You can't buy your way to forgiveness, but you do have a chance to make things right." By the time the sun went down, word had quietly spread across the town. The same CEO who had coldly dismissed a struggling mother had anonymously arranged a full year's worth of groceries for families in need, cleared medical debts for single parents, and brought back the workers he had wronged. No one could explain what had shifted in him. Only four rough men and one small girl with a pink bicycle knew the answer. When Ryder and his brothers returned to that tree later that evening, Mira ran toward them, her face lit with pure joy. Her mother Clara stood nearby, still fragile, but wearing a smile that hadn't been seen in weeks. The evening light fell across her face, and Ryder noticed how her hand shook as she tried to express her gratitude. He simply gave a quiet nod, dipping his head as the engines settled into silence. "You don't owe us a thing," he said. "Just promise me you'll never stop fighting." That evening, they shared a meal together. The bikers, the woman, and the little girl who had tried to sell her most treasured possession not for herself, but out of love. The setting sun spread gold across the chrome, the grass, and the folded cardboard sign now resting gently in Mira's lap. For one quiet moment, the world felt a little less shattered than before. If this story has moved you, if it reminded you that kindness can arrive from the most unlikely of places, please take a moment to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Every interaction helps stories of genuine compassion reach the people who need hope the most. And before we close, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. What would you have done if you had been in Ryder's position? Because sometimes a single act of courage is all it takes to make the whole world believe in goodness once more.